Today we're going to be doing the Photoshop crash course. Now the crash course is meant to throw a lot at you very quickly, hoping that you pick up some of this. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the big stuff in Photoshop. That way you're functional in Photoshop quickly. Now a lot of the little details in Photoshop we're going to come back to in later tutorials. So don't feel like this is covering everything, but we are covering a lot today. Now in the document today, you're going to need to download this. You can find this at trippiedesign.com. The worksheet is broke down in very specific ways, and in fact most of my worksheets are. I have multiple artboards is what we're seeing here. There are 4 different artboards in this set. You can see those in the layers panel. So let's zoom in on the layers panel and let's really see what's happening. Now the layers panel is your most essential panel in all of Photoshop. I like to say if you understand the layers panel, you really understand Photoshop. In the layers panel, 3 of your artboards are marked as red and locked. You can mess with them, I don't really care, but you don't need to. You shouldn't have to work with any of these. The work area artboard is blue. This means that you're designed to use these layers in the tutorial today. So we should be going through each one of these blue layers at some point in this tutorial. Now if you look at your layers, you may notice on the left hand side that the blue area also has an eyeball in it. Photoshop can be deceiving in the layers panel specifically. If you were to look at this artboard called work area and count how many images you see, you might come up with 6 because you might count this sky and this grass as different images. But in truth, those are the same image. Additionally, there is one hidden image in here. There is no eyeball on it. If you click on that, it'll light it up. So you really have to keep an eye on your layers panel, right? So you know what's where and what it looks like. Now, in order to work inside of your layers panel, you have to be very careful about what you select. Clicking on each layer that you're working on as you're working on it, make sure that you're affecting the layer that you have selected. So click on the layer that says hot air balloon first. Make sure you have that selected. When you click on it, you may see this blue bounding box show up around your image. If you don't, there's an option up here that says show transform controls if you have your move tool selected. So hit V on your keyboard, make sure you have your move tool selected. Up at the top, you can hit show transform controls or turn it off. It's up to you what you want to do. I tend to leave it off personally. Now, we need to go over some basic shortcuts in Photoshop. So stay with me here. There's a few of them. First, I want to hit Control or Command, hold that down, and then hit the plus symbol on your keyboard. Hit it a bunch of times, zoom way in. And if you zoom in far enough, you're going to see these little squares called pixels. This is what makes up every image in Adobe Photoshop. All images are raster images in Adobe Photoshop. So raster images have these little pixels that make up the overall image. Hold Control or Command and hit minus. That is zoom out. That allows you to zoom out. Now if you're zoomed in like this and you need to move left or right, your mouse may have a scroll wheel that will allow you to do it, or you can hit space, hold that down, click and drag. That'll get you your little hand tool, which allows you to move the artboard. If you make a mistake at any point today and you create something that you don't like, so for example, I'm just going to make some random shapes real quick. If I don't like any of this, Control or Command Z will take you back one step each time you tap Z. If you find that you're too zoomed in and you just want to get back to the original image, all the way back, Control or Command 0 will do that. That'll open you right back up. Z is your zoom tool, Z for zebra. You can click, hold, and drag to the right or left. That'll help zoom you in as well. I know this feels fairly rudimentary, but being able to get close to your image is going to make it a lot easier for you to work with your image. Now on the left side, if I click and hold on any of these tools in the toolbar, I can see that there are a number of tools underneath each one. So click and hold on any of them. And to the right of each one, you'll see a letter. That letter is the shortcut key to get to that tool. So if I want my brush tool, B will get my brush tool. So you'll hear me say letters like B for brush tool, and that's where I want you to go, to the brush tool. Hit V as in Victor to get to your move tool. Now, if you hover over any of these, a lot of them show kind of tutorials on what this is. It'll kind of give you a breakdown. So if you see these popping out, that's what that is, kind of giving you a little detail. So let's start with what we're actually building today. My goal is to make a postcard that came from the land of Oz. So in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy gets sucked up into a tornado and sent to the magical land of Oz. In my thought pattern, if she wanted to send a postcard back to Kansas, she needs to take that postcard and throw it into a tornado so that it goes flying back to Kansas. So what we're going to make is kind of a distressed looking postcard. Now we need to avoid copyright where we can, and finding images of a woman that looks like Dorothy can be a little bit of a struggle. So the lady that's walking on the beach here is going to represent our Dorothy. The picture of Bergs is going to represent our flying monkeys that come from The Wizard of Oz. What does a flying monkey look like at a distance? It probably looks like a bird, right? So we have to use our imagination on some of these things. Now hit Z on your keyboard or Command plus Command minus, zoom in on this hot air balloon so you can see it very well. Now over on your left hand side, hit W on your keyboard, that'll get your object selection tool. Now the object selection tool works well for a lot of things, and we will talk about the object selection tool, but I really want to click and hold on that tool and focus on the quick selection tool today, because this is the tool you're going to find yourself using the most often in this program. So grab that quick selection tool. Look up at the options bar, you can see the options for this tool. First being the size of that tool and the way it selects. So this is the neutral or new selection, the add to selection, and the subtract from selection. So what is a selection, right? So in Photoshop, you need to select anything that you want to affect. And this means two things. First, you need to select the layer. So in the right hand side under layers, click on the hot air balloon layer, and then click one time and hold your mouse down steady on this hot air balloon. These marching ants are a selection. This is your selection. And you'll see when you clicked, it didn't just grab the one area of the circle, it grabbed all the colors that were very similar to what you just clicked on. Now if you move your mouse around a little bit, you'll see that that selection moves with you. And at one point, it's going to recognize this hot air balloon, and it's going to jump to select the entire hot air balloon. Let go of your mouse when it does. You see it makes a pretty clean selection of that hot air balloon. Now this contextual bar down here gets in my way sometimes. If you want to get rid of that window, go down to the bottom of that, look for contextual bar. You can turn that off. Right here, you can see the hot air balloon's basket. Now the struggle here is the size of your brush. So to the right of the letter P, there are two brackets. On the left bracket, if you click and hold, it'll make your brush smaller. The right one will make your brush bigger. So you want your brush to be a little smaller than the basket. I'm at about 10 pixels right here. So with it a little bit smaller, I'm going to click on that basket, hold and drag just a little bit in order to select that basket as well. This will give me both of these things selected. If your selection is a little rough, if you went out like this and it doesn't look good, to get rid of these marching ants, Command or Control D will deselect. You can try again. So if it didn't work right the first time, hit Command D, try again. Now once we have that selection in place, we can go to create what's called our layer mask. So the layer mask is one of those things that can be a little difficult to understand at a quick glance. So going to the bottom of my layers panel, notice I have my hot air balloon selected. I've got my marching ants right here on my balloon. Down at the bottom, there's this little button right here called layer mask. The layer mask icon actually cuts out whatever you have selected. So when I click on this, it's going to cut my balloon out of its overall background. I can now move my balloon around, it moves by itself. Now the trick here is that it didn't actually delete anything, and I know that's what it looks like. That's not what happened. What happened is we put a layer mask on it that's going to hide all of the other pixels except for the ones that we had selected. So if I look over in my layers panel, I can see this little black box that showed up beside the hot air balloon. That black box represents visibility. The black areas in that box are now invisible. the white areas in that box are now visible. So just to show you, if I click on that, that's the white area. The actual balloon itself that's been selected, that's here. If I move that around, you can see the layer mask moves with it, right? So the layer mask is a way of constructive editing. So we didn't destroy anything. If I need to go back and get pixels from this image, I can go back and do that. If I had just deleted all these pixels, there'd be no way to go back and fix that after I've saved the document. So let's go back. Selecting the hot air balloon first and then creating the layer mask on it. And we use the quick selection tool to do it. So let's go down to the girl and let's look at a little bit more of a challenge for this. Making the selection on the girl is not terribly difficult, but there are areas that we're going to have to retouch to make sure that it looks clean. So with that same quick selection tool, click, hold, and drag on that woman. You'll notice a problem right off the bat. What is that? Why isn't it popping to match the girl? It's because I have the wrong layer selected. I'm still making a selection on that hot air balloon. I just selected the whole landscape at the bottom. If you make a mistake, Command D or Control D will fix that. Make sure you have the right layer selected. So click on the layer that is the girl. Go to the layer of the girl, click, hold on her head area, and drag down. You'll see it makes these snap motions where it's trying to detect the color or shape that you're trying to match. So it does a pretty good job of this most of the time. But if colors are close, it's going to struggle. So as I go down towards the feet, I might see some struggle going into the sand. If you look carefully, right beside the hips and right here at the waist, we've got areas of the sky showing through. So this creates issues. It also didn't perfectly select the hair, which is not something I'm going to worry about in this tutorial. There are ways to grab that hair a little bit more cleanly, but this tool is not going to grab all those micro details every time. So scroll down to the waist area, this area right here. Now, if I were to create a layer mask on her right now, I would cut her out, but this area is going to stay here because I have it selected. I need to fix that by deselecting this area. A couple of ways to do it. Up in my control panel, my options bar, I can click subtract from this selection. That's one way. You'll see a minus symbol show up in your tool. You can also hold Alt or Option just to swap to that tool. If I click in that area, it makes a pretty decent selection of that area. If I need to fix something, I can let go of Option and bring it back. Over here towards the waist area, the hip area, I want to grab this area as well. Now the trick here is that this color of the background and this color of the dress are very close to each other. So hold Alt or Option, click and drag down to deselect this area. Then you're going to have to let go of Option or Alt, have that plus symbol in the middle, and come back and kind of get that dress a little bit more cleanly. This can be a bit of a fight sometimes, going back and forth, selecting, deselecting until you get it right. Over on the other side of the hip, right here between the hand, I'm going to need a little bit of a smaller brush for this area. Once I've made it smaller, I'll hold Option or Alt, and I'll go through this area to kind of clean this up as well. Now, I am not looking for perfect on this. We are just looking to kind of get the basics of what we're doing here. So once you have a pretty good selection of her, go to your layer mask. Again, that's that little symbol down at the bottom. Make sure you have her layer selected. You should already. When you click on that layer mask button, it should cut her out. Good. Now, I like to fix the most obvious issues in any image first. And the obvious issue with this image is her feet. Her feet don't blend into that grass well. It looks like she's walking on top of the grass. And we have some leftover residue from the original image. So we want to fix that. And in order to do that, we're going to paint on our layer mask. So before we begin painting, I want to point out that in your layers, you have two different things on this layer currently. You have the image itself and you have the layer mask. These are two very different things. And what we're going to do dependent on that is very different. So I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to get my brush tool. I'm going to make my brush tool a little bigger, and I'm going to make sure I have black as my color. Now in your layer mask, black is invisible, white is visible. So if I were to paint a line through her like that, I create a layer of invisibility going through her, right? I can cut her off. Now, there are a number of ways to kind of play with this, and we'll go into more detail with this later. Now, if I'm painting white, it does the opposite. It brings back the original image. So by painting on this layer mask, I can create a lot of different looks. Be very careful that you do not have the image selected, because if you paint on the image, you're not going to see transparency. You're going to see the actual colors of black and white. So if you're seeing these colors, be very careful. Hit Control or Command Z, go back, clean that up so that's not the case. Make sure you have the layer mask selected. Now, I could make this brush a little smaller. I could come in here and kind of clean up these little areas using black if I wanted to, but I'm not too worried about it. As long as you have a pretty decent selection, I'm good with it. What I do want to do is zoom in on the feet area. Now, the issue with the feet is that it does not look like it's sitting flush into the grass, and I also have this residue. So I'm going to use my brush to kind of clean up this residue area so that it's not in the image. I'm going to use a very small brush, a couple of pixels wide, and I'm just going to click and drag roughly through her feet into her dress in some areas. I'll make my brush a little bigger in a couple of spots, and I'll do that throughout both of her feet. Now, by doing this, it looks absolutely terrible close up, right? Like, this looks absolutely awful. I get it. But Photoshop is one of those things where being zoomed in might hurt you sometimes. So if I'm zoomed in like this, and then I were to zoom out of this image, this starts to look like her feet are actually in the grass, right? And that's the key to this. It's the little touches that make things look more real. So I've got her in place. That's my Dorothy. She's walking through her field of poppies towards the Emerald City. So the Emerald City is what I'm looking for next, and that's this castle up here. Now before we begin, notice that there is an image of these birds on top of it. That's a bit of a problem. If we look at our layers, these work in a level of a hierarchy, meaning whatever is on top in your layers panel is on top of your actual document. So the hot air balloon is on top. So if I were to grab that hot air balloon and move that over my other images, it's on top. If I were to move that hot air balloon underneath the castle, it's going to go underneath that layer. Okay? So the issue that I have here is that the bird is on top of the castle. Click on the bird layer, and on that little eyeball to the left, just turn the eye off of the bird for the time being. Make sure you go back and select the castle. So make sure the castle itself is selected. Zoom in so you can see the castle. Now each selection's gotten a little bit harder, and this one is a little bit more difficult to select. So let me help talk you through it first. Start at the bottom, at the wall of the castle. Click on the wall, hold, and just drag straight to the right on that castle, selecting the wall itself first. And then move your way up. You'll notice that it snaps and pops in certain ways to kind of grab what it's seeing. Once you get to a certain point, though, you're going to have a bit of an issue. A lot of these little spires in here are not going to be selected. So you'll need to make your brush smaller and try to clean up that selection if possible. If you're grabbing areas that you don't want, hold Option, go back through it. See how cleanly you can select these spires along the way. Now, I will tell you that the main spire, the main tower here, gets very thin towards the top. This bar is basically 2 pixels wide. It's going to be very difficult to do this in a perfectly clean way, especially getting this bird up here at the top. So if it's not perfect, don't worry too much about it. Remember, perfect is not something that we do. We work in the real world, and there's no such thing as perfection in this program. So once I have that castle selected, I've got a pretty good selection of it. I'll create that layer mask that will cut that castle out of its background. And again, I'll look for the first and most obvious problem for this castle. And to me, that's the wall at the bottom. So the wall doesn't sit properly on this field, right? It doesn't look like it's faded properly into the field. It looks like it's just kind of floating on top. So I want to make this a little bit more smooth. Again, in your layer menu, make sure that you have the correct thing selected. I want to have the layer mask itself selected, not the layer. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard. I'm going to get a black brush. I'm going to make my brush bigger. I'm going to go to about 150 pixels. And this is up in the option bar right here. You can click on this little arrow. I want to make sure I have a 0% hardness at about 150 pixels, somewhere near there. Now I'm going to hover my mouse right here at the bottom of this castle. Now I don't want to put it directly on the castle because what I'm about to do is delete certain areas of this to layer mask over it. And I don't want to get rid of the whole wall like this. That's not a good look. I want to get rid of just the very bottom parts. Now just to show you, if you have a hard brush, what you're going to get is a hard line where it just creates a straight line just like you had before. If you have a soft brush, it's going to create a fade on this line. So I'm just going to barely touch the bottom of this castle as I click, hold, and drag. And you see it creates that faded look towards the bottom, which makes it look like the wall's further in the distance than it did before. Looks cleaner. Alright, so in Wizard of Oz, she is going to the Emerald City, and this city is far from emerald. We need to make sure it looks emerald, and to do that we need to look at adjustment layers real quick. Now adjustment layers are down at the bottom of your layers panel right here, this half black half white circle. There is an adjustment panel up here that you can explore with, but just to make sure that we're getting to the right thing, I'm going to click on that half black half white circle, and I'm going to go to hue and saturation. Now when I do that, my properties panel is going to pop up. It's going to be big. It's going to give me options. I've also got a new layer in my layers panel that looks like this. This is what an adjustment layer looks like. And just so that we're clear on it, the adjustment layer is something that's going to affect every layer below it. So if I make an alteration to this hue and saturation layer, it's going to affect the castle, the girl, and the background. It will not affect the hot air balloon, the bird, or this little area up here. So adjusting this adjustment layer creates issues for anything underneath it unless it is linked down. And we'll look at that in just a second. So first, change your hue, and you'll see the hue change on your image. You'll go into an Alice in Wonderland style castle all of a sudden. Everything's changing color and looking kind of crazy. Now, the issue with this is that it's affecting everything. I only want it to affect the castle. At the bottom of the adjustment layers, there's this symbol right here. This symbol will affect only the layer below. This is a way of clipping it down. Now, another way to do that would be to come into your layers, hold Alt or Option directly underneath your adjustment layer, and look for this symbol. When you see that symbol, you can click one time. That's going to jump me up, and it's going to add this little arrow right here. This arrow means it's only going to affect this image right here. So let's see if that's true. When I change my hue of my castle, it does. It only affects the castle now. The field's not changing color. Now, hue stands for color, right? Hue is another way of saying color. So when I adjust the color of this, it's adjusting all the colors to match. Notice that if you put it on green, it looks the opposite of green. If you put it on pink, it looks green, but I have all these pink looking roofs on top. So this creates a bit of an issue. All adjustment layers work with the properties panel. So in the properties panel, I want you to look for the option that says colorize underneath lightness. Now, if you can't see it, you can extend this up or down so you can kind of see where it is down here. Click on colorize. That's going to turn this one color. Now I can change the hue to be green or emerald. There's my Emerald City, but it's not like a gem emerald, right? It's not popping out. What I'm looking for next is saturation. Saturation is how much color do you want. So if I take it down to nothing, I get grayscale. I get black and white. If I push it way up, I get very green, right? So that's very saturated. That's what I'm looking for. That looks like an Emerald City to me. So that's got my city broke down and looking good. All right, so now we're going to zoom out and we're going to close down the properties panel and we're going to bring up the bird image. So there are no images of a bunch of flying monkeys at a distance out there. Sorry to tell you. So flying monkeys at a distance to me are going to look like birds. So I found an image of some birds. You have to use your imagination when creating things sometimes. Now, what I want out of this image is just these black areas of the birds. First, make sure you have the bird layer selected. You could grab your quick selection tool and sit here and very painfully select each bird. That's exhausting. Don't do that. There is a tool in here called your magic wand tool. You could click on each bird and it'll make a fair approximation of each one, but again, painful. There are 100 ways to do everything in Photoshop, and just because I tell you one way doesn't make it the best way, right? There are easier ways to do everything. Now, what I'm going to do is attempt to isolate just these birds first. So if I look at the image, I've got this tree and this cloud down here, which are different colors. I want to get rid of those anyway. The birds and the sky are just khaki and black. That's it. There's only two colors. So I need to select just the birds. So I'm going to go over here to my selection brush tool. And I am going to draw an area that'll turn pink like this over just the birds, just like this. Nothing complicated. Don't get too wild with it. Doesn't need to be crazy. So that is the basics. It just has all the birds in it. I'm not getting the background area. I'm not getting this cloud, right? Now, I'm going to go to my move tool real quick just so I can see the actual selection in place. Once I have that selection in place, I need to delete all the pixels on the outside. Now, before I do this, this is a destructive work method. Anytime you're deleting pixels, if you're hitting the delete button on your keyboard, you're really not working in the right way. But for this exercise, I'm going to delete these pixels because I know I won't need these again. So now if I hit delete right here, it cuts a hole in my image of my birds. I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want to delete everything but the birds. So I'm going to go up to the top to where it says select because I'm trying to change my selection. And I'm going to move down to the word inverse. Inverse is just to flip, to reverse, right? So I'm going to inverse my selection. It doesn't look like anything changes, but if you look at the top, you'll see these little marching ants are now on the top. You've selected everything but the birds now. Hit delete on your keyboard. That'll delete everything but the birds. Hit Command D to deselect. Now, what is this? This doesn't look right either, right? We need to get rid of this khaki area. And to do that, we're going to use our magic wand tool. So hit W on your keyboard and move down looking for the magic wand tool. The magic wand tool selects anything of one color. Now it can be close to a color, kind of off from a color. In fact, if I click on my background, I'll click on the sky. The blue I clicked on, it selected everything close to it, but some of the darker blues, it did not, right? So this magic wand tool basically selects a color. And if we look at this color of the birds, we have this khaki color that's all one color. So if I click on that khaki color with that bird layer selected, it'll select all of the khaki areas, but not the black of the birds. Hit delete on your keyboard again, and then Command D. Now you have your birds. We still have issues though, because if you look carefully, we still have these little areas happening between the birds. Some of them have these khaki outlines. It's not a good look. So to fix this, I'm going to use my blending modes. So we've talked a lot about the layers panel when it comes to the actual layers. We've talked about adjustment layers. We talked about layer masks. But just here at the top of the layers panel, there's an area called normal. You are blending these images down in a normal way, meaning the images look exactly like you expect. But if you click on normal and alter this, you will be blending based on different aspects, whether it be the lighter pixels, the darker pixels, or blending between the two. In this scenario, we want the darker pixels to come through. So if I hover over these options, I can see which one would work best for me, and it's probably that multiply option. So with multiply selected, my birds blend in a little better. Again, is it perfect? No, there's no such thing as perfection, right? If I look carefully, I can still see this little bit, but nobody else is going to see that at full size, right? Perfect doesn't exist in this. Now, that gives me my flying monkeys at a distance. We have created most of what we need. The last bit is just kind of finishing it up. So the last layer that we have is that dirty paper texture. If you click on that, and again go to your blending modes, then we are going to blend this image down to the other images. So we can blend using the darker options, which probably gives us the look of that dirty paper we're looking for. We could blend down with the lighter areas of this image. We could overlay them so that they both kind of work together, and that gives some good looks. And there are some options down here at the bottom that do completely wild different things. So play around with those and kind of look at what they can do for you. A lot of people sleep on blending modes. Blending modes can do a lot for you. So I want you to click on multiply, please. The last thing we're going to talk about is the type tool. So T for type tool. If I were to click right here on this field, it's going to give me something that says Lorem Ipsum, probably in Myriad Pro. Lorem Ipsum is just placeholder text so that you know where your type is. Check your layers panel real quick and notice that there is a new layer there with the letter T. This is a text layer. And text layers work in specific ways. Your option bar at the top is set here to alter this text. Now this works like any text editor. I can click, highlight, drag through it with my type tool. But one thing you're going to have a struggle with is your shortcut keys are no longer going to work. So I can't hit V for my move tool because it's going to type the letter V, right? So what I'd like you to do is type your name. You can hit Command or Control A, that'll select that text, or you can click and highlight that text. Up at the top, I want you to find a font. I don't care what font, anything but Papyrus. I want you to find a font that you like, click on it, and then I want you to make the size bigger so that it covers a good area. You can use your move tool to move this around. You just have to go over there and click on your move tool to do it. And if you have, and you need to get back to typing on it, hit T on your keyboard again, go back and select your text. I want you to change the color of your text to whatever color you would like. And then I want to experiment with your text. So up here at the top, there is a T with a little circular line underneath it. This allows you to warp your text. So you can arc it. You can create a little lower arch, you can rise it up, you can create a flag wave. You can alter how much this is distorted based on these little slider bars along the way. So pick one of these where it's still very readable, because that's what it's all about. You still want to be able to read it. But feel free to kind of play around with these a little bit and see what you create along the way. When you're happy with it, hit OK. Now the last touch we're going to talk about in the layers panel is the layer styles. So let's go down here, and I'm on my text layer. You can see I have it selected. Moving down to the bottom, I'm going to look for this button that says FX. These are your layer styles. So we've talked about these three buttons right here today. The layer mask, the adjustment layer. Today is the layer styles as well. So click on that for me, please. And I want you to go to where it says gradient overlay. Let's click on that. Now this little panel is going to come up, and you may have to move your artboard around a little bit so you can see your effect. Now the gradient overlay allows you to put a gradient on that layer. It can be an image, it can be text, it can be anything. It can be a shape, whatever floats your boat. So you can change your gradient right here, altering the colors that you pick to get a different kind of gradient on that text. You could double click on that and make your own gradient as well. There are different blending modes, so you can blend that down using your multiply or your lighten to create different types of looks, overlaying it, and how much you can see through it. There are different types of gradients. This is a linear gradient. It goes in a line. I can pick a radial, I can pick an angled gradient or a reflected. I can create a lot of different looks here very simply. I can make it bigger, smaller. That's one layer style. You can put multiples on anything you want. So hit bevel and emboss. That'll give it a little bit of a 3D. Now you'll need to check it and then click on the name. You can make your 3D bevel a little bit bigger. Play around with the size. Play with the softness. Play with the depth. Alter this so that it looks different, unique to you. Do the drop shadow. That is probably the most common thing used out there. You'll probably be set to a multiply blending mode. Get a dark color so that it pops off of the background. Play around with the distance, the spread, play around with the size. See what you can create to give a different look to your overall set. As a graphic designer, your goal more than anything is to be different than other people. Because if they can do this in Canva, if they can do this in something basic, then there's no point in hiring you to do it, right? So you have to be unique. A lot of these also have a little plus symbol to the right, meaning you can add more of these. I can have 4, 5, 6, 7 strokes on it if I want to. So there's a lot of options on how you do what you do. So kind of play around with this so that you get a look that matches how you want it to be. Now, naturally, if this was a postcard, I would write right here, "Welcome to Oz." I might put a little stamp in the corner, and that would be my postcard to Oz. So that completes our crash course today. What we really focused on was the layers panel. The layers panel is the key thing inside of Adobe Photoshop. We talked about our layer styles. We talked about our layer masks. We looked at how to adjust layer masks and alter them. We looked at the adjustment layers and how we can play around with those as well. So we covered a lot today. And again, I'm not looking for you to remember everything we talked about today. We're going to go into more depth about these at a later date. So I hope you enjoyed your daily dose of design. If this has helped you, please subscribe to the channel to keep building that creative toolbox that you are in possession of. See you in the next one.